He felt his heart pounding as the officer twisted his arms behind his back. Phones were out. Everyone was watching. "I didn't do anything," Jayden shouted. Then a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Let him go!" It was the biggest pop star on the planet, and what happened next shocked everyone. The sun scorched the festival grounds, heat shimmering off the packed crowd as the heavy thump of bass vibrated through the air. 16-year-old Jayden Carter navigated through the sea of bodies, his curly hair damp with sweat, his red hoodie clinging to his back. His hands were stuffed into his pockets as he nodded along to the beat, his favorite pair of faded jeans hanging low on his hips. The music was loud, the energy electric. This was supposed to be the best day of his summer. "Yo, this is insane!" Jayden yelled to his friend Malik over the noise. Malik grinned and nodded, the two of them riding the high of the music and the freedom of being young and alive. But then, a rough hand clamped down on Jayden's shoulder, yanking him backward. "Hold it right there!" Jayden twisted around, heart slamming into his ribs. A white police officer with a buzz cut and dark sunglasses loomed over him, his grip tightening painfully on Jayden's arm. "What did I do?" Jayden's breath hitched. His eyes darted to Malik, who had gone pale. The officer's face was hard and cold. "We got reports of a suspicious individual fitting your description." Jayden's stomach dropped. Around them, the crowd started to notice. The music was still pounding, but conversations were shifting. Heads were turning. Phones were coming out. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Jayden's mouth went dry. "I didn't do anything." His voice was sharp with desperation. "Empty your pockets," the officer barked. Jayden's face burned with humiliation as he pulled out his phone and a crumpled festival ticket. His hands were shaking. His chest was so tight it hurt to breathe. The officer snatched the hoodie from Jayden's hands, making him stumble. "Where's the stash?" "I don't have anything." Jayden's voice cracked. His pulse hammered in his ears. The officer's hand moved to his radio. "I saw him talking to someone suspicious. We might have a drug situation here." Jayden's friends were frozen. Malik's mouth slightly open, his eyes wide with fear. Jayden's fists curled at his sides. His heart was racing so fast it felt like his chest might crack open. "Hands behind your back." "No!" Jayden shouted, stepping back. His voice was raw. "I didn't do anything." The officer's hand closed around his wrist, dragging his arm backward. And that's when Jayden saw her. Lana Rain. She was standing at the edge of the stage, silver crop top glinting under the sun, her long braids cascading down her back. Her gaze was locked on them, her expression sharp and dangerous. Jayden's heart skipped. She saw everything, and from the look on her face, she wasn't going to let this slide. Jayden's breath hitched as the officer twisted his arms behind his back, the cold metal of the handcuffs biting into his wrists. His chest tightened as the pressure increased, and a sharp sting shot through his shoulders. He could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on him. The crowd had gone eerily still, despite the music still thumping in the background. Phones were out. Faces were lit by their screens. People were recording. His humiliation was being broadcast in real time. "Yo, is this real?" Someone whispered. "Why are they arresting him?" Another voice murmured. Jayden's throat tightened. His cheeks burned with shame. His legs felt weak, like his knees might give out beneath him at any second. His mouth opened, but his breath came out in short, shallow gasps. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it vibrating in his temples. The officer's grip on his arm tightened. "You're making a mistake." Jayden's voice cracked with desperation. His eyes widened as the officer pulled out the handcuffs, the metallic click loud enough to cut through the noise of the festival. The officer ignored him. His hand shoved Jayden's face toward the ground, the rough pressure making Jayden stumble forward. "Stop!" The voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a whip. The officer's hand froze mid-movement. Jayden lifted his head, breathless and shaking, and saw her, Lana Rain. She was standing at the edge of the stage, her silver crop top catching the sunlight, ripped jeans hanging low on her hips. Her long, golden-brown braids framed her face, which was hard and set with fury. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, were locked on the officer. Her expression wasn't just angry, it was lethal. "What are you doing?" Lana's voice was low and dangerous. The officer straightened, his grip on Jayden's wrist still firm. His mouth twisted with annoyance. "This is none of your business, miss." Lana's chin lifted slightly, her gaze narrowing. "It's very much my business when you're roughing up a kid for no reason. He fits the description." "Of what?" Lana's eyes sharpened, her voice cut through the humid air like a blade. "A young black teen enjoying a music festival?" Jayden's pulse skyrocketed. His breath hitched as Lana took a step closer. Her gaze never left the officer's face. "Let him go," she said, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. The officer's jaw tensed. His hand hovered near his taser. His sunglasses reflected the harsh sunlight, but Jayden could see the subtle twitch in his jaw, the hesitation. "Lana, don't." Jayden's voice was hoarse. His wrists ached. Lana's hand shot out and wrapped around Jayden's arm. Her grip was steady and strong. Her gaze bore into the officer like a weapon. "If you arrest him," Lana said, her voice cold and lethal, "I swear to God, this is going viral in the worst way for you." A muscle in the officer's jaw jumped. His hand twitched near his belt. For a moment, the entire festival seemed to hold its breath. The crowd was dead silent now, every phone pointed at the unfolding scene. Jayden's chest rose and fell in shaky bursts. His legs still felt weak beneath him, but the warmth of Lana's hand on his arm steadied him. Lana didn't move, didn't blink. And the officer hesitated. The officer hesitated. His hand tensed on Jayden's arm. Then he released him. Jayden stumbled back, shaking. His wrists were red where the cuffs had almost been locked. "You okay?" Lana asked. Jayden nodded slowly, his breath coming out in shaky bursts. "Come with me," she said, taking his hand. Jayden followed her toward the stage. The crowd parted as they walked. Jayden's mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. Lana stopped at the edge of the stage and turned to him. "You good to sing?" Jayden blinked. "What?" She smiled. "You know the words, right?" Yeah, I do, but get up here," she said, pulling him toward the stage. The crowd started cheering as Jayden climbed up. His legs were shaking. The mic was cold in his hand. Lana leaned down and whispered, "Take your power back." And then the beat dropped. Jayden opened his mouth, and his voice cut through the air, clear and strong. The crowd roared. Jayden's voice soared through the festival grounds. He felt the music in his chest, the lyrics pouring from his soul. He wasn't scared anymore. Lana danced next to him, her hand wrapped around his shoulder, hyping him up. The crowd went wild. Phones were out. Thousands of people were chanting his name. Jayden was grinning so wide his cheeks hurt. When the song ended, Lana pulled him into a tight hug. "You killed it," she said. Jayden could barely breathe. The crowd was still chanting his name. Lana turned toward the officer, who was standing stiffly at the edge of the stage. "Let this be a lesson," she said into the mic. "Don't ever come at my people like that again." The officer's face turned bright red as the crowd booed him. Jayden looked down at his hands. He had just gone from almost being arrested to standing on stage in front of thousands of people. Lana raised his arm into the air. "Give it up for Jayden Carter." Jayden smiled. For the first time in his life, he felt powerful. He took a deep breath and looked out over the crowd. And in that moment, he knew. He wasn't just another black kid being profiled. He was a star.